of course, my brothers and I all had questions afterwards because, we wanted to know all these little details that they weren't even around to answer anymore. But um, they got into the group when there were just 30 people, so it was in the very beginning stages, and they survived. I mean, one particular story my father would tell me, actually, I have to tell you this. They didn't really speak about it much when we were growing up. It was like we learned about it in school, but, I think it was still so hard for them, that it was the pain and the suffering was still so new that I think it took years for them to really start. And we never questioned it. It was when we all had, my brothers and I, when our children were old enough where they were learning about it in history, they would sit down and say, Grandma, Grandpa, tell us stories about the war. And that's when all of it really started to come out. And one story in particular my father told us was how did you, when they said, how did you survive? How did you eat? How they would go out at night when they knew that everybody was basically sleeping, and they would sneak into the city and stand outside the bars where all the Nazis would be drinking. And they'd come out, they were drunk, they were easy to kill. These men were strong. I mean, they were strong like bull. I mean, it was amazing. My father was strong until he died. And they would steal their ammunition, they'd steal their liquor, and that was basically it. That's how, if you saw the movie, in the movie, they always had scenes of the men doing shots of vodka just to numb the pain and to prevent, the winters when it was freezing cold and they could barely stay warm. The drinking helped. So then they would steal food, and they would go to the side. Once they got the ammunition, they go to the sides of the roads. Then they would see the Nazis coming. They'd start to kill them that way. But they never wanted to waste their bullets if they did. There's a scene in the movie where my father told us this story too. If they ever captured a Nazi, they didn't want to waste their ammunition on them. It was too precious. So they had the kids that were in the woods. They would tie the Nazi to a tree, and they'd have the kids stone them to death. And that was their way of, and they would throw the stone saying, this is for my mother, this is for my father, this is for my brother, this is for my sister. I mean, the whole... Yes, and if you saw the movie, my parents ended up getting married in the woods. I don't know if it was, I'm sure it was very fabricated, being a Hollywood movie. But my mother, of course, used to tell us, well, I don't have any wedding pictures. We got married in the woods, But the strength...
The couple in the movie was your parents?
Well, it wasn't actually them. At first I thought it was because my mother's Yiddish name was Kaya, and her name was Haya. But she married a Bilski. She married one of the Bilski brothers. Do you remember that scene? Yeah. So, yeah, but it wasn't her. But I'm assuming they had a similar type of wedding. The will to live and the strength that these people had is so amazing. There are almost 20,000 living Jews today from the people who survived in this particular partisan group, because one of the Bilski brothers' sons, who came to speak at the Chabad house in Cleveland at Solon, we went and we listened to him, and we got together with him, and he just told us stories about his father and his uncles and how they were just such modest men, and they never really wanted to be known as heroes, and they were interviewed, and he said that his father said to him, when we're gone, then you'll take it to another extreme with the movies and the books, and they did. And my parents kept in touch with them until they died. I mean, they used to always talk about our leaders, the Bilski brothers. They were amazing men, and they were, the whole, just grasp the whole thing, and that will and strength to live and go on. And, my father, he made a vow, if he was saved and he lived, he would go to temple. And, see, a lot of Holocaust survivors had different mentalities. He believed there was a God because he was saved. A lot of Holocaust survivors believed there wasn't a God because they allowed this to happen. So, in his case, I mean, he was a very Orthodox man. He went to shul every single day after he retired, and he became almost like a matriarch at our temple, because he left an Orthodox shul to come be with all of his kids because we all belong to a conservative one. And he was a little ahead of his time because he thought it was so wonderful that women could come and say Kaddish for their loved ones, where in the Orthodox religion you really weren't allowed to do that. And I never realized until he died how loved he was and how respected, because people came up to me and they like told me things that like, you know, I loved him and I appreciated him and I knew what a strong, amazing man he was, but it's almost like I didn't have enough time. And he lived till he was 92, which was amazing, you know? And I don't even know what else to say other than the fact that, you know, we're here. I have a brother who's carrying on his legacy totally in the fact that he has gone to shul every day since my dad has died. And he took over his place, and some of his best friends are men in their 90s and 80s because all my dad's friends became his friends. And it's just, the whole thing is just, you know, it's so heartwarming to see that I know their legacy will be carried on, and the fact that, you know, the Jewish religion is just so important, and the fact that we have to keep going on and being strong and showing the world that, you know what, we are the chosen people.
How many people were in the ones?
Total at the end, 2,500. When my parents joined, there were 30.
2,500.
But
For how
25
many years did they have in there?
Over 3.
Do you want to share? All four of my grandparents were Holocaust survivors, and my parents were actually, my dad was born in a DP camp, my mom was born in Europe. There's just story after story that I've heard, especially about my grandmother, who was just this extremely, she had people call her, 30 years after the war and say, Celia, you don't remember me? You saved my life. Like, she didn't even know. You saved my life. She used to knit. They wouldn't let them wear underwear. And to that, it was so, like, degrading and demoralizing. So she used to knit them underwear. She used to peel the strips from the barracks and make knitting needles out of sticks and knit underwear for all the girls in the barrack. About 3 years, it'll actually be 4 years in November, I went to Poland, and I stood in her barrack, and found her barrack and stood in her barrack, and it was a really intense moment to think that there she was, like, on the verge of death, and here her granddaughters standing, and what a testament it is to her and everything, but everything she went through, and she went through a lot after the war too. She never ever stopped believing in God. She never ever gave up faith or hope, ever. So.
Hey ladies, I'm gonna try to do this. If I have to stop, I will. My father lost everybody in the war.